welcome back again. We just said welcome back, and welcome back again. It's a deja vu. For the 12th episode of the current review with Central News Live, supported by the Unsaid SA Podcast with Tebogo Kotsi, supported by the TT Hookup with Thamsanqa Tu. Today we have been joined again by the Honorable KARABO KHAKHAU, the DA Shadow Deputy Minister for Higher Education, Science and Innovation. And the last time we had a very nice conversation which couldn't end because it was a lot of debatables. But today we have I think a topic that will somehow unite the sentiment around what needs to be done for the future of this country. But I will let her lead the conversation for us. Meka, how do you
everybody else that is tuning in? I hope everybody is well as one can be given the circumstances surrounding the plight of students, not only in Tzaneen, Limpopo, which I will talk about in depth later on as to why that's the case, but across the country, the university.
I think let's get right into it. You guys visited Madalapara.
Yes.
Settlement.
So,
and what did you guys find there? And what were the purpose of the visit?
Okay, so the purpose of the visit was this. So we, in our portfolio committee, Higher Education, Science and Innovation, sometime in June. And in their presentations of the institution, the labor representatives at the institution made us aware that there are students that are NSFAS funded who are currently living in informal settlements at Madalapara in Tzaneen. So the Letaba Tzaneen campus in Limpopo, students that are living in informal settlements. I then obviously took it upon myself to engage the management at the institution, and the management blatantly said there's no such. But then I was like, there's no way that could have been raised if that's a lie. So we then followed up.
To the students' consent.
Yeah, but I'm getting there.
Oh,
so I'm saying, so then there's no way that could have been raised if it's a lie. So then I took it upon myself then to engage the students at the institution with help of one of our DA counselors, Councillor Libius anymore. So I conducted a hybrid oversight with students that live at Madalapara. And as if you may have probably seen that there's a Times Live article that came out on the 21st of this month. This article quotes an interview that they had with one of the students. I'm just going to quickly quote it for you. So one of the students said that, I'm going to open quote, some of them stay in pairs and find they are paying 250 each. Some shacks cost 400 Rand. For the RDP houses, they pay 800 Rand. The ones who are lucky are the students who find that they have proper built rooms, then they can pay 1,000 Rand. But a lot of people stay in shacks and not RDPs. And then the student continues to say, on quote here, conditions are not good at Madalapara. It is not safe for students to stay there, and they cannot easily study. During rainy days, it becomes a mess. They have to put out buckets as shacks leak. So this is the corroboration that the students themselves have even given out to the media and the truth. And this is very important for me to quote this, particularly because NSFAS and Minister Nzimande have came back subsequent to the statement that I released to say that this is a lie. There is no such.
But tell me, is it not the responsibility of the learner themselves to find themselves what would be suitable accommodation and therefore submit it to the institution for funding?
So the system changed. So what happened is this. So previously, what used to happen would be that the NSFAS would pay the institutions of higher learning, and then the institutions themselves would then pay the accommodation, or students could pay directly themselves. And then because of loopholes such as the ones that we're currently discussing, NSFAS said that no, we want to have our direct payment system where we can have control over this. But now they have to catch up with everybody else that they hadn't accredited. The problem we have right now, Kohore, of all these student accommodations that NSFAS is currently funding, NSFAS is currently funding 77,209 beds, but they have only accredited 26,530. So it means that we have 65.64% of NSFAS funded accommodation that is not accredited. So 65% of the beds that they're paying for, they don't know where they are, they don't know whether they're safe, they don't know what the conditions are. And that's what we are fighting for, as the Democratic Alliance, to say, but you must.
But is that because the students themselves are the ones who are looking for this accommodation, and they could be submitting incorrect information to NFSAS?
So there are two faults here. So there's two faults. There's the relationship between the landlords and NSFAS and the students themselves and NSFAS. So some students are saying, obviously, yeah, it's cheaper for them to live there. Some are subjecting themselves to such. But the problem is it shouldn't be. That is incorrect. It is illegal. It shouldn't be under any circumstances that state money is used in ways that is in contradiction to state policy itself. The current NSFAS funding policy says, Hore, student accommodation should meet certain standards, and a shack definitely does not meet those standards. Not only is it an inhumane place to live in, that's why Renale Botata, South Africa, across board, outside of the student community, where we want people to live in decent homes so that they can have dignity in the homes that they live in. The same is true with students, right? But also, it opens up a loophole for a whole lot of manipulation and use in an ill manner. NSFAS wouldn't be in a position that they find themselves in had they had proper accreditation mechanisms across board. But another thing that we also need to also be honest about is that this is not the first time this has been brought to NSFAS's attention. Taba ya madala bara is an issue but the institution, the TVET college, and the relationship between the management, the institution, as well as NSFAS, is too cozy. So because of that cozy relationship, everybody tried to sweep it under the carpet, but endangering students. Students shouldn't, they're not the only people that should have the responsibility to protect themselves. The state has a responsibility to protect. Moreover, it has a responsibility to protect the management of its own funds. If one child gets raped in one of those shacks, who's going to take responsibility over one of those students? Who's going to take over responsibility if there happens to be a flood and students die in the middle of those floods? Who's going to take responsibility for that? But also, again, the landlords themselves are wrong because they're exploiting the state. They know really well that they do not meet the minimum criteria for student accommodation provision, but they're benefiting. So a lot is wrong, and that's what we're trying to get the ministry to comprehend and work on. Instead, they're not.
And because the ministry is denying the fact, and also NSFAS is denying that is the truth, you guys have launched a PARA application.
Yeah, we have submitted a PARA application because they are denying in the media, but behind closed doors and committee, here's the conversation. The reason why I know how many students are paid for those that are accredited is because of what so the 77,000 versus the 26 communicated on record legally before Parliament. So they know this. So that's why we submitted a PARA application. We want to know exactly who are these landlords, how long have these contracts been existing, how many students actually are living at Madala, although the students themselves say it's around 200 students. We want to know also, how did they land these contracts? That's what we want to know, and that's what we want to get to the bottom of. And we're not just trying to do this kaletaba. We want to know how many more letaba TVET colleges exist. Madala bara, hona le bo madala bara baba kae? Ka hare ho South Africa belong ho re tse re sa tsebe ka bona. It's a mess. It's a problem.
And in your opinion, why would NFSAS deny the suffering of these students, especially if it has been found, that there is certainly unaccredited accommodation through, through the funding of NFSAS. Why are they denying such evidence, in your opinion?
I think, in my opinion, I think there are two reasons, right? The first one, it is embarrassing. It is absolutely embarrassing that in this day and age, in 2023, there are students who are living in shacks that are paid for by the state. And NSFAS has been marred with a whole lot of allegations of incompetency, of a lack of service delivery across the year. So this is another indictment and a list of things that they are doing wrong. So in trying to show face and trying to make it look like they have their house in order, they're denying something that they can't even deny. NSFAS and the Department of Higher Education are led by a minister that is arrogant, a minister that is out of touch with the lived realities of students, a minister that doesn't care. If you are a political leader that cares about the quality of education, which the quality of shelter is linked to your ability to perform effectively at school, we wouldn't have such a case. But unfortunately, we don't have such a minister. He's arrogant, he does not care. And this is something that is not new. It's something that has been the case for years. And we're still perplexed as to why is it that President Ramaphosa keeps redeploying this person outside of the tripartite alliance vibes and the relationship it has with the South African Communist Party. We know very well that this man is out of depth. He's not the right man for the job. And that's why it's easy.
What do you think you should do to address this?
Because how can you... Number one, it's easy. All you need is a pen and paper. You can even do it with a tablet on your cell phone. You go and walk into, you say, these are the people we're paying for. You have it on your system to say, these are the people that we're paying for because you have them on your system, right? But you can see how many of them you haven't accredited. You walk into that space, you tick box, check, is there a roof that is okay? Check, is the wall okay? Check, is the space, check. Like, into the basics, ABCs that could be done. And there's nothing stopping NSFAS from doing so. The reason why they're not doing it is because people are lazy. People are lazy. People have no respect for the jobs that they do and themselves. People have become complacent because they know where they are cushioned. That come accountability time, they are protected because of cadership. Cader deployment has ruined our country. And that is why, no, we don't have to care about students or Nabadulagai, because for as long as I'm a card-holding member of the ANC and I am connected to Cader Hubani and I'm comrade whoever, I'll still come back employed. And that is what we've been fighting for at the crux of cader deployment as the Democratic Alliance. And this is a case in point example of how cader deployment has gotten us here.
I would have expected that NFSAS response would have been, okay, there's this allegation coming through, let's investigate. If they want to admit it upfront, they would say, let's investigate, because they're trying to hide something. That's what we're saying. But what do you expect the minister to do in order to address the shortcomings of NFSAS as well as this particular situation?
So there's a difference between an expectation and knowing what should be done, right? So nobody expects Blade Nzimande to do, Dr. Blade Nzimande to do anything right. Nobody expects that out of him because he's effectively incapable of doing so, right? And this is why we've been calling to say, let the man go retire. He's well over his 70s, he's tired. Let him go nurse his grandchildren somewhere. He can go farm flowers and water a garden somewhere. He can do that, right? He must leave, and then somebody else needs to take over the job. So that's what we expect out of him to do, is just to leave. But because we know that's not going to happen, we want him to at least have some sort of mood in him, be human, at least be able to relate to conditions of pain, indignity, and suffering, that which is what is happening at Madalabara in Zanin. Be human enough to know how you yourself would never subject yourself to an environment of living that is of that nature. You wouldn't be able to survive there. So why would you expect another person's child to do so? So, and the question is it because you don't care because NSFAS beneficiaries are poor? So as long as they have a roof of their head, it's fine. It doesn't matter what the quality of the roof is. Is it because you do not believe in the idea of safety, of shelter, particularly given crime levels in the country, GBV? Is it because you don't care about the quality of education outcomes of this country, which is what we see? Because I mean, TVET colleges are treated like unwanted stepchildren with poor funding for almost everything and everything there is to be funded for. The quality of education there is also questionable. We know that curriculum reform is something that still needs to be had and prioritized. Like what is it? So we have a template that is available for the ministry on how they can effectively run their house. And that template is not, it's not a Rolls Royce kind of template. It's a basic ABC template of what to do things right. You know, in order for you to fund something, you need to accredit it. Simple. Do not fund it if it's not accredited. If you want to fund it accredited, simple, you do that. You know, okay, we have a student accommodation shortfall within institutions. Give institutions funds and make sure that you do so, so that they can build. You know, you have a problem with the disbursements of funds and allowances to students. Make sure that you have a service provider that is qualified to do so. You don't, like, it is really as simple as that.
But in the prevailing circumstances right now, what measures can the DA practically take in order to help with that situation there in Matelabar?
So we've started with a PIA application so that we can get more information to apply more pressure on it, right? Because the bottom line is, we know that the higher the pressure, you have to buckle at some point, right? You can be as arrogant and as stubborn as you want to, but bottom line is, the hotter it gets, you'll have to buckle. And that's what we want. And we're engaging in a committee as well. It's not just a media fight that I am having with the ministry and NSFAS. We're engaging constructively in committee. Like tomorrow, for example, we are meeting with NSFAS. NSFAS is appearing before our portfolio committee. These are issues that we're thrashing out. And I and all my colleagues are giving constructive inputs and advice on how to do this. And so that's what we want. But most importantly, we want to rally young people to say that we can't keep quiet. We can't fight alone. We have to all fight together to make sure that we get the outcomes that we want. So we can't have young people sitting and complacent about this. They too must make a noise. They must make a noise to make sure that they give the necessary pressure available. Because ultimately what we want, it's not about proving that the ANC is useless and the DA is shining. It's not necessarily about that. It is about making sure what justice is served for those who need it and for those who are worthy of it. It's by making sure that students are taken seriously, that they live in spaces, that we have a NSFAS that works with leadership that is capable, that is competent, with proper management of funds. We want a ministry that is led by people who know what they are doing, but fundamentally who care. I want to vote who care. That's all that's necessary. You don't need a lot. You need to be a human.
And please assure us, like, would these questions have arisen if we were not on the eve of an election? Like, is this perhaps like an electioneering campaign?
No, how could you even ask me that? See, the reason, no, there's no, it's not, this is not an election campaign. It is not an election campaign. And because it's not an election campaign, I started having this conversation in June already, well before we were reaching into the election. But I think one thing that most people misconstrue is politicians fighting for their interests. When a politician is fighting for the interests of marginalized people, it's because they are campaigning. But the bottom line is, it's not that. The problem is politics is interested in everybody's life. Everything is political, right? The fact that there's students who are living in shacks right now who can't fend for themselves is a matter of political leadership, a matter of political fight, simply because the money that is being used to fund these shacks is state money. So obviously then it's going to be a political fight. But is it an electioneering tool to try to prove again that the ANC is useless? No, I didn't have to go fight hard to find this information. The information was just there. So they themselves are doing it themselves. They are botching chances themselves of showing South Africans that they care. And it's painful. It is really painful, but that's why I'm in politics up to time. I'm there to provide an alternative to a mess and a status quo that does not serve the interests of those who depend on the state to function well.
You quoted an article in which NFSAS responded to your statement. Did the minister also respond? Because I also know that in your statement there are a number of instances where you've engaged him in parliament, in committees, but the responses we're getting were not really, achieving anything.
Yeah. No, look, the NSFAS can't respond without the minister knowing they're responding, right?
No, but it's two entities, right?
No, they're not two entities. NSFAS falls under Minister Zimande's leadership. And how NSFAS got to know also that I have released communication is because I directly tagged Minister Zimande and directly sent a letter to his office, right? So the office is the one that took the decision for NSFAS to respond. So let's get that clear. You can't divorce Minister Zimande from NSFAS. You can't divorce the two.
So it is him denying those conditions.
He is, but he's not just denying it through NSFAS in written responses or communication to the media. He's done so in committee too. If you've seen the letter that I sent to the minister, I'm just going to read. I'm going to read you just the closing section of it so that you can understand what it is that we're dealing with here, right? So not only does Minister Zimande deny mathata eleng hore a teng in committee, he's not even interested in lifting a finger, and that's what we're trying to get him to do. Lift a finger, earn your salary, do something, right? Earn your seat as a member of parliament. So I said to him, I was like, well, this is the third letter that I have sent to your office requesting your intervention in matters this year. I'm just going to lift. I have not received any response from the first two letters. So the first letter I wrote to him was around the issue of curriculum reform at the Capricorn TVET College, also in Limpopo, right? We conducted oversight there that revealed that the study of mechatronics is not up to date with what it is that employers in the market want from the labor. So effectively, students there are graduating with qualifications that are useless for employment. He did not respond. And then when I asked him, he denied it again. In face-to-face, when we had this conversation in committee, he denies. The second case was on the funding of NRF. NRF came to committee itself and said that 75% of qualifying applicants are not getting funded through NRF because there's no money. I wrote to him, I'm like, but how are you working your budgets? There are things that are being paid for unnecessarily, like i.e. when your luxury in life that doesn't have to be paid for. That doesn't have to be paid for, but we have a vacancy, we have a vacuum of research in South Africa, or a vacuum of policy that is based on research, because the researchers that were supposed to be funding are now not funded because how budgets are prioritized within the ministry and the country at large is a problem. He did not respond. So this is the third letter. I'm like, Minister, but now at some point you must respond to my letters. At some point you must stop trying to deny. Not only do you ignore my letters, you deny in committee, you deny in questions within parliament, you deny to the media. So I don't know what more proof people need to see that we have a problem. We have a crisis of a person that is effectively deaf to the cries of students and how their lives are being ruined by a system that does not care. But we're not tired. We'll continue to make a noise. At some point, like, yeah.
I'm saying, going back to Mandela Parane, is in that area, is there, close to the TVET college itself, is there like alternative accommodation which would be suitable to students? Or is this perhaps something else that's happening there?
Yeah. There are RDPs. If you recall in my quote, when I quoted the what the student had to say, which is
some live in RDPs which cost 1,000.
Yeah, our whistleblower was very clear to say, Hore, there are proper houses like RDPs that are available with rules that have proper built-in rooms that are available there. But the truth is that we need more. We need more student accommodation. And this is the cry that we've been fighting to say, but there must be funding for TVET colleges. But you're not about TVET college itself.
But also the idea of an RDP house to accommodate students when we understand that an RDP house was built because of a lack of house. I'm sorry, man. I think our lines are a bit. I think we are disconnecting a bit, and we're speaking over each other.
Yeah, sorry. I think the marang technique is a problem. But from what I picked up from you, I think you were asking, Hore, but the idea of an RDP house being used for business is problematic, right? Because RDPs were built to alleviate policy. So poverty. So how is it that an RDP owner is now renting out that RDP? You see, this is a thick problem, right? It's a thick problem on the extortion of the state. So not only is it a NSFAS problem, it is also a human settlements problem to say, what about who are the beneficiaries? Who are on the list of beneficiaries for getting RDP houses? And that's a separate conversation altogether, but there's a whole lot of loopholes. And again, at the center of it is cadre deployment and comradeship. You scratch my back, I scratch your back, and that's how we ended up here, right? But there are other houses that are of good quality. But what I was trying to get to here is that Letaba TVET College has been receiving grants from the ministry itself for building of accommodation, right? So, but there's no real clarity around where the money is going, where the projects ended up, who the people who were responsible for the projects were, and effectively why we are here. And that is part of what was brought up in the conversation that we were having in committee around that. So it's a really, really, really serious conversation when Abu Ditami, because there's a lot that is wrong at that institution, and it is not the only institution that is wrong. That is experiencing these problems, and we want to get to the bottom of it. And I promise you, once we get the responses to the PIAs, you'll be able to draw the link between one landlord, one comrade, one cadre, one student, one contract, and one error. Like kuningi nje. But the bottom line here is this: we are not going to tire as the Democratic Alliance. We won't be silenced. We will continue to highlight the frustrations of students, because that's why we exist. We are here to be the voice for those who can't speak up for themselves. We are fundamentally opposed to the use of state funds in improper ways. We do not believe that any student should be living in a shack. It is wrong. Shacks are inhumane. Shacks deprive people of dignity. Shacks are unsafe. And nobody, not even just a student, nobody must be living in a shack. We want proper housing for students, ultimately to make sure that there is no student left behind, to ensure that people graduate, people get jobs, people are able to participate effectively in their economies, they're able to lift their own families out of poverty, and are able to succeed in life. That's what we want.
Before we conclude, then maybe just on a lighter note, what do you guys call yourselves, like when you are relating with each other as DA members? Because you hear EFF, they call themselves fighters. Hey, fighter Mamang, fighter KARABO, and then the ANC, Kaida KARABO, and Comrade KARABO. What do you guys call yourselves?
We call the two terms. So two terms that I use, so we're Democrats. So we are Democrats, and then secondly, colleagues. So in more formal setups, we refer ourselves as colleague, because we share a very high culture of professionalism, of formal labor practice, and people in the private sector ordinarily would refer to themselves as colleague, and that is the standard against which we hold ourselves. That's why we even have a shadow cabinet, right? Because we're ready to govern. We don't want to wake up tomorrow and be shocked that, oh, the DA has won, and so we don't know who's going to be in charge of higher education.
Now,
but yeah, we are Democrats, so I am Democrat KHAKHAU. Democrat KHAKHAU.
So Democrat KHAKHAU, tell me, like, if the DA were to win an election next year, and you become the Minister of Higher Education,
yes,
would we continue to have NFSAS in the current form that it has, or are there going to be changes that you would implement there?
We were definitely going to implement changes. We have communicated across the years, actually, while I was still a student at UCT, that the current form of model of NSFAS does not work. The first thing that we need to do with NSFAS is we need to reorder its funding and how it gets money and how the money goes out. So we want a tiered model, right? So currently what we have is just the state funding NSFAS in bursary form. What we want to incorporate the private sector in the funding of NSFAS, but we want to make sure that those who are supposed to get 100% funding get 100% funding. Those who are supposed to be getting loans to pay them back, they're supposed to get loans and pay them back, and a proper system of differentiating between classes, and a proper way of judging who is qualified for what, right? But we also want to make sure that this is directly linked to the skills shortages within the country, to make sure that the output of education, of funding that we put in education, results in employment, in economic participation, and ultimately economic growth. That's what we want to do. But the other thing that we also want to make sure is run well is the effective management of NSFAS itself as a body. So that would require a skills audit, an employment audit altogether within NSFAS, and root out everybody else that's just a passenger on the road, who's useless, who's not doing their job, to make sure that we get that right. So that's what we want. But also, again, linked to this is the question of student accommodation and how it's going to be dealt with. So we want to deal with a proper market research to make sure we know which areas are qualified for receiving what allowances and what payments of accommodation, because the cost of accommodation kahara, let's say Bloemfontein Willows, won't be the same as the cost of student accommodation Rondebosch here in Cape Town, right? So the caps are supposed to be different there. We want to incorporate digital forms of administering accommodation in a way that makes sure we are up to date with the fourth industrial revolution demands and skill set revolutions. And yeah, so there's a whole lot that we want to do. But NSFAS
so you're not opposed to the idea of free education to at least the first degree?
No, not free education for everybody. No, you can't have all free education for everyone. How now mistress who's been a teacher for 30 years and who qualifies to pay for accommodation for education yaga, in the same leather as Memampo Elong, who is a domestic worker whose child cannot get the same benefits as those that I can get from my mother's pay. So that is wrong, completely wrong. You can't even you can't put her on the same ladder as Ntate Motsepe's child or grandchild. It's not possible, right? So we do not agree as the Democratic Alliance that there should be free education for everyone. There must be free education for the poor, funding for the missing middle, and those who can pay must pay. And it's the same argument, yeah, equity in the aspiration of equality. Le motho ya mahareng le motho ya mokgutshwane ebe ha ba eme fetseng ba batla ho sheba ka hare ho lebala ebe o ba fa ma-grade kaofela. Ha o ba fa ma-grade kaofela a motelele o tlo ba motelele ho feta mahareng, a mahareng o tlo ba jwalo. So what you need to do ke hore o fe ya mokgutshwane ma-grade a mo fihlisang leveleng ya motelele, ya mahareng le ena ma-grade, so that everybody can reach the same. But ultimately we want to make sure that the state is understood to be an agent for assistance for independence, and the state is there as a vehicle that provides opportunity for people to get independence. And we don't want perpetual dependence on the state. We want people to be able to be responsible citizens and use state money accordingly. Because the more money if we use our model the way Kibuangate, then there's more money available in the system to fund more people, more poor students who depend on state funding, instead of funding people
Miss KARABO KHAKHAU, Honorable KARABO KHAKHAU, thank you so much for your time, and all the best with resolving the situation there. Go Matala Para. We hope those students, they get the assistance they need through your intervention. And, the activism of many others who can be involved in that space. All the best, and thank you.
Thank you very much, and I hope we're able to resume it. Thank you for having me, and thank you for everybody who's tuning in.
All right, thank you. And this time around, we weren't as hostile as we were perceived to be the previous time, right?
Yeah, you're getting there. You're getting there.
All right, man, keep one.
All right, bye-bye.
That was the Honorable KARABO KHAKHAU of the DA, the Deputy Minister, Shadow Deputy Minister for Higher Education, Science and Innovation. Man, we shall be back on the second part of the current review just now. We're out.